I just remember I was walking, and you can't walk fast enough to generate body heat, but I was shivering. So I'm like walking and shivering at the same time. And then that's draining my energy because, you know, I'd eaten all my food, I drank all my water. And like the last bit going up to camp 2 is it gets steeper, and I was just like, I was pretty much done. And the thoughts are in my head, in the back of my head, just thinking, right, I'm gonna be that guy that that dies just below camp 2.
So welcome back to the show anyway.
Thank you for having me back on. Appreciate it.
I trust you've had a wheelie bin bath this morning.
I did, yes. Did you see it?
Yeah, I saw it on your story. How was that? I mean, the weather outside down in Wales is terrible, so I'm not sure what's up like by you, but it looked painful.
Yeah, it's the same here. Yeah, exactly the same. But like, it's quite nice because the wheelie bin's at a good temperature now, whereas during the summer the wheelie bin was too warm to get into.
Oh, okay.
So you were getting into like a bin and not getting the effects of the cold. And I bought a sauna during lockdown.
Oh wow!
So now I go in the sauna for 30 minutes, like go out for a walk in the morning, come back, do 30 minutes in the sauna, and then the bin's at a good temperature where I can just get in the bin, and just to the point where you start shivering, and then I get out. And then, do you know what? Like Lewis, for the rest of the day, like you're zen, right? Like nothing can bother you. You're almost like, I tell people it's almost like you're vibrating. You've got this like vibration, similar to like when you go out and you do some long endurance or something like that. It's like any problems, any dramas, anything, any, you know, bad mood or anything that was sneaking in beforehand just gets completely like annihilated with the sauna and cold bin.
So how long are you spending in the bin?
So if I go straight from bed into the bin, I'll do the temperature it is now, probably about 4 to 5 minutes.
Right. Okay.
To the point that I'm shivering. If I go straight from sauna, it's probably about the same. If I go straight from the sauna and go straight into the bin, 4 to 5 minutes. Because you come out and you still like I've not got much body fat on me, so I get cold quite easily, surprisingly. So yeah, like I shiver quite a lot post the bin. The great thing is though, like it's actually it's good to see like people on social media doing the same thing though.
Yeah.
And I've got quite a few people that regularly send me videos of themselves getting in bins. So, and they're obviously getting the same benefits. And I've even had a close friend who's actually bought a bin, because you can buy an extra bin for your house. So he's gone out and bought a bin to do the whole cold bin thing.
Wild.
Have you not tried it yet?
No, I haven't tried it. I'll have to give her a go. I'm not great with cold showers, to be honest.
Boy. You're a Welsh boy. You should be all over that stuff.
I know. I'll give her a go. That's I'll try and do it before the year's out anyway.
Yeah, the cold showers are good though. Like if you can, like like that's kind of where I started, was just doing a cold shower, and just getting the benefits of that. And do you know what? If you can like, because the worst thing is the initial shock of getting in.
Yeah.
Then once you're in, your body kind of normalizes to the cold, right? And you don't feel the cold as much. So like, I just found the best way was to just like stand under the shower and just turn it on, as opposed to if you turn the shower on and like put your hand in and start feeling.
You try and creep in, it all goes wrong.
Yeah, sure.
Dreadful, man. So before yesterday, I jumped on a few fan groups and things of the SAS show and yours, and I asked people if they had any questions they wanted me to ask you. Probably about 40% of, they were probably 90% of these were women. 40% of them asked me, "Are you single?" The other 40% asked me for your number, and the other 20% I probably won't read out because I like to think it's a family-friendly show. So I think I'll stick to my own questions.
Yeah, okay. Let's do that.
So we're going to talk about this book, Soldier.
Awesome.
So we're going to, hopefully we can go through each letter before the hour's up. The first thing that struck me in the prologue was you get across this really like burning desire that you had, that you wanted your life to be anything but ordinary. What was it about you as a kid anyway that made you so scared of becoming content and living a mundane life?
Do you know, there's probably a few factors there, but I think the main one was just was just boredom with what we see as being normal. Um, and you know, we all get conditioned to, you know, we came from a generation where our parents wanted us to go to school, do really well at school, and then go on to college and university, and that then led into a job where you got a salary, which you paid into a pension scheme, and then retire. And that's the common mold which everyone, you know, pretty much a lot of people when I went to school, if not everyone, they all followed that mold. So I guess kind of if you go back to kind of school really, where, you know, it's like a retrospective thing, because I look back on those times at school and you know, I question why I was so bored and why I hated school. And at the time when you're at school, that's not what you're thinking about, right? Your brain's still developing. You're almost just thinking, you know, you don't like school, but you don't understand why. And for me, it was more just about, it's boredom, right? Like, I know that if I'm not interested in something, then I struggle to get energy for it. And school was like a classic example for that. And it's ironic now because, you know, a lot of the topics that we're getting forced down your neck that actually have zero relativity to actual life or getting a job or a career, like I'm quite interested in them now. Like I find like reading about physics and science and space and geography and history like really super interesting. Whereas, I don't know, back then it's like a forced culture. It's like you will learn these subjects to go to college and get a job. And it's like, even if you look and take that model, right? When you go and get a job, I don't know, for example, let's say accountancy, it's like you don't need history to be an accountant. Yeah, you need maths to be an accountant, but so I guess it was like the whole school concept and being locked indoors and you know, then probably looking at the teachers and thinking like, you know, no fault by their own, but they're not exactly inspiring characters, are they? One or two maybe, but the majority of them, it's, you know, I wouldn't listen to them for life advice looking back now retrospectively. So it was kind of that really, like looking back was when I started thinking, well, this normal, or what we see as being a normal model of life kind of wasn't for me. I went to college, and again lasted less than a year, and then came out of college because it was the same thing, right? It was being forced to do this work, not really understanding why you had to do this work, but someone's telling you to do it. And then like I found that my energy was best suited for something in the military, and that's where, like, as cliche as it sounds, that's where I kind of got my education was, you know, joining the military at 19 and almost like being part of a team of people that are very similar to me, of probably very, very similar backgrounds, who, you know, most likely went to school and hated it and didn't get along well and got into trouble. And now they've found their way into the military, and that gave them a sense of purpose. It gave them something to be proud of, something to work towards. And it's all stuff that you enjoy putting your energy into. So yeah, that was kind of it really. And then I guess as I progressed through my military career, it was, I don't know, the older you get, the wiser you get, don't you? And the more, like, I'm probably very much like you. I like being inspired by others. I like getting all sorts of education, whether that's listening to people on podcasts, whether that's reading books, don't watch much TV, whether it's a documentary, and that kind of stuff inspires me. And I guess the more I listen and read and do all that kind of stuff, the more I go off on this, like this trajectory path that is completely away from that normal model that we talked about earlier.
Yeah. The first chapter in the book is about self, and one of the tests you mentioned, the Myers-Briggs test. I've done that. I'm an INFP, or borderline J. Why do you think it's so important for people to, you know, do these things and get to know their personality types?
because I don't think we do it, and I don't think people focus enough on their self in everyday life, even from a young age, right? You're taught almost to disregard yourself. And I think culture as well, social media. It's like, I mean, I know myself when I was a kid, I was quite shy and I was concerned what other people thought and whatever. And I just think it's really important, and the earlier the better, to kind of understand, you know, that Myers-Briggs the Myers-Briggs one does it really well in explaining quite simply like where you are in a personality type. But I think it's super important that people or kids or whatever get onto that as early as possible, so that you do understand that you work differently to everyone else, right? The way you work is completely different to the way I work, and there's no right or wrong. They're both equally great in their own characteristics and ways. But I think understanding those characteristics and ways are, you know, super important for how you see fit in the world, and what you want to put energy into career wise, or whatever you do in the future.
Yeah. One thing you mentioned as well, that I picked up on, is this idea of imposter syndrome, which I think is a massive problem. For myself, when I first started this podcast, I had it like dreadfully. I remember the first few interviews I did, I sucked. Like, I was terrible, because I was speaking, I think the first interview I ever did was with a woman who's a director at Nike. And, you know, that's a pretty big position to hold. And I'd never really done interviews before. And I just I was thinking to myself, like, I don't deserve to be doing this. And I was just very shy in the interview, and everything she said, I sort of just took as gospel. I never challenged her on anything. And I just think back to them, and I had this very bad imposter syndrome at the time. So how do you think it's best to tackle imposter syndrome and deal with it?
It's probably just like what you did, right?
Yeah.
Just keep doing it and keep doing it. And do you know what? Like, do you still get imposter syndrome now?
I mean, not nowhere near as bad. There'll be like one or two. Will there be something completely out of my field? I mean, I did an episode like a few weeks ago, and I ended up talking about politics, and I sort of had it then, but for the majority, no.
Yeah, see, like, I still get it now, but like, it's like it's I don't know. We all started in the same place, right?
Yeah.
And I speak to some people like now that are, you know, at the best of the game in whatever sport or business that they do, and it's so, like, the imposter syndrome thing is so common in, you know, people that, you know, people would deem as high achievers or people that have succeeded. And to be honest, I think it keeps you quite humble. Like, like, I always just see myself still as this kid from Preston, you know, and I feel like there's this thing inside of me that's probably still that kid in Preston, but I'm trying to get away, not away from that kid in Preston, but like as far away from that useless kid in Preston, and try and make, you know, try and succeed in whatever I do. But that imposter syndrome follows you around regardless. I think, you know, it comes down to choice, and it comes down to, you know, you have the choice to get away from that imposter syndrome, and you do it by just throwing yourself into these situations that, you know, that seem difficult or seem unachievable. And the higher up you go, or the more along the path you go of throwing yourself into those difficult situations, you know, that imposter syndrome almost levels up as well, right?
Yeah.
And what you used to get imposter syndrome for, now you don't.
Yeah.
And now you get imposter syndrome in different scenarios and situations.
Yeah.
I guess,
sure.
you know, it's all down to exposure, right?
Yeah. I mean, a few weeks ago, I was talking to a man called Brett Weinstein, he's a sort of
that.
You saw that? Yeah. Okay. So when I was getting ready for that interview, I was going through some of his materials online, and like a lot of it was just going over the top of my head. And I was thinking,
he's super intelligent, right?
Dude, it's unbelievable. Like, I don't think I've ever spoken to someone who's so into. I mean, I had to listen to the podcast back 5 times before I really understood what he was saying to me.
Yeah.
So I just remember thinking, I was sat there across from him, and he was talking about all these things. And I just remember thinking, this whole thing started for me. I started this podcast recording myself and my friend on an iPhone in Tesco car park at like 1 o'clock in the morning. And that's my only credentials to be, you know, up to this point. And I just remember thinking, you know, what the fuck am I doing talking to this guy? But
you've grafted, you've put the hard work in.
Yeah. I feel like,
and it's like, people, you know, that's another thing. People don't see that and just see like a successful podcast speaking to, you know, various characters around the world. But yeah, like it's important to know that that's where it started, Tesco's car park.
Yeah, Tesco's car park. And you know, you have to make a decision as well. You can let that define you, and that's all you see yourself as. But you know, there's got to come a point where you have a bit of courage to say that, you know, unless you do put yourself in these situations, it's never gonna really go away. That imposter syndrome.
Yeah, true. And yeah, and it's, I don't know, you've probably seen it as well. It's like the more times you throw yourself into these situations, it's like that personal growth, isn't it? Like you either see that it wasn't as bad as what you thought it would be.
Yeah.
Because like the build-up's always worse than the actual action.
For sure.
Like I always find, like, even, you know, waiting around to do an interview, or I don't know, whatever it is that you're getting nervous about, like even back in the military, right? Take parachuting, for example. Like waiting around to do a night jump, you know, you don't, after a while you don't get nervous, but like the nerves are just sat there, but you've found a way to just cover them up. But you know they're there because no one likes night jumping. And then literally it's like the build up is quite a long drawn out process, putting on the kit, like walking out to the plane, receiving a brief, sitting on the plane on oxygen or off oxygen. And then there's like a 5 minute, a 2 minute and a 1 minute count where you stand up, put your kit on, like walk to it, you know, the back of the plane drops down and you're looking into the black abyss. And like, this is the time when you're just like in your head, just going through, right, okay, you do a few like dummy pulls and stuff like that. And you're like, get out, get stable, pull, right, turn right. And then it's almost like that moment where someone puts a thumb in front of your face and you go, like all that just disappears. It's the same in everything else, or I find it's the same in everything else. It's that build up and apprehension is so much worse than when you actually start something and completely forget about all that build up and anxiety, and you get into the flow.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I'm interviewing someone tomorrow called Dave Rubin, who was very similar to Brett Weinstein, and you know, the build up to that, I can already tell it's going to stress me out. But when I'm into the flow, it'll be fine. But in those situations as well, I think it's important to have the right people around you telling you the right things, because the person I do this podcast with, Joe, I'll always speak to him, you know, if I'm feeling apprehensive about an episode or whatever. And he'll often give me confidence, he'll build me up. And that's something you mentioned in the book. You talk about drains and radiators. And I think it's important to surround yourself with the radiators. So while we're on that, do you want to explain that concept, or the difference between a drain and a radiator is?
Yeah, but then I think what you find about like meeting these people, right, is they're just people just like you. And they're probably exactly the same. They're probably a little bit apprehensive about, like, oh, I wonder what he's going to question, like what his questions are going to be, what he's going to ask me, like how I'll be perceived by like a UK like viewer base. Like I always find, like, especially with the nervous apprehension, even like speaking to brands, it's like there's always a person behind that brand, and that person's got a face. He goes to the toilet in the morning, he drinks coffee, and like we're all just the same, right? And we all just get like nerves and apprehension before doing everything. Like, no, like, you know, I've not met someone that doesn't get some sort of nerves and apprehension. If they don't, they're generally a psychopath.
Yeah. So
drains and radiators.
Yeah.
Do you know what? Like I've always just kind of said it, drains and radiators, and you're either kind of one or the other, right? And like we go through this life and you meet those drains, and I don't know, until you put a label on it, you don't actually know that they're a drain, right? But you feel it like suck the energy out of you. They're generally like negative people. They're always making excuses for why they've not done this or why they weren't able to complete this. And you never really understand that until you put that drains and radiators label on them. And then you've got the radiators, right? It's like when you're around them, they make you feel good. They give you energy. You can bounce off them, right? And you just feel energy when you're around a radiator, and they're positive people and good people to be around. And I've just found in my life, it's like, I don't know, you either get one or the other, right? You don't really get people that are not, or like sitting between them. It's either people are either a drain or a radiator. And yeah, like I think I say in the book, it's like just my whole thing in life is just surround myself with as many radiators as possible, and just get away from the drains.
No, absolutely, man. I mean, I worked with a real drain once, and like no matter what you said to him, it was like you could, you tell him that you've done this thing and he's done it better, or you say that you've got this, you've passed this course, you've done this opportunity, he did it 5 years ago. Yeah, or everything you do just sucks the life out of you. And so since then, I think I've been quite ruthless with like cutting people out of who you let you're in a circle. And people might think that's mean, or they might take it personal, but it doesn't really have to be a personal thing. Sometimes you just got to be ruthless and look out for number one, because I think at the end of the day, no one else is going to look out for you, really.
Nah, and like as much as it's cliche, right? Life's so short, right? Like it's so short. I saw, I don't know, like I saw some kid get knocked off his bike the other day around here, and it was just like that kind of stuff just hits home. That it's like he went out that day, jumped on his motorbike, took a corner on that roundabout, and like who knows what happened to him. He looked in a pretty bad way. But it's like that could just happen, right? And it's like you've wasted all this time just not cutting yourself away from those drains. And like over time, that's like compound interest with drains, right? Yeah. They have an effect on you, and they have effect on your overall mood and your overall view on the world. And yeah, I'm exactly the same, ruthless with cutting those people out and just meeting more radiators.
Yeah, you gotta be, man. The second letter in Soldier. So let's talk about opportunity. There's a quote I've written down here in the book. It's always better to regret something you've done than something you haven't. So my question to you is how you sort of weigh up opportunities and what they're worth. Because there's been a few times in recent years for me where an opportunity's come and maybe I haven't taken it, but then I spend the next month wondering if by not taking that opportunity I've somehow changed the course of my life somehow in a negative way. So I wonder for you, when opportunities present themselves, how do you think is an effective way of weighing up their worth?
So the way I do it is always on gut feel, and that usually points me in the right direction. And like some, because that opportunity is massive for me, because I didn't really set out like from, I wasn't from like a privileged background, or like I said, like school was horrendous for me, didn't really enjoy it. So like I've never been given opportunity, but like I've worked hard to put myself in positions where like really good opportunities have arisen. And it's literally just being on gut feel and just going, understanding that I didn't want that boring, monotonous life, and just took the opportunity when it arose. But you've got to be, you've got to be in that mindset of being able to see those opportunities and recognize them. I think I talk about in the book. I don't actually, because I talk about that. But there's a part of my career when I turned up to Hereford where the opportunity was, or the choice for where I went next was completely taken out of my hands. And I ended up going to mountain troop when I wanted to go to air troop or mobility troop. And at the time it was like the worst. It was quite, it was a bad it was out of my hand, but it felt like it was a bad decision. Like I had zero mountain experience, something that I wasn't really interested in. But that decision actually kind of was probably the best decision for me ever, because it, that led to, the summits of Everest, the high altitude climbing, going away to Germany and training to be a mountain guide. That led to me potentially leaving the military, and then it all has this butterfly effect further on down the line. But yeah, like I'm a little bit like you. Like I've generally not said no to an opportunity. I've generally never said no to an opportunity and then sat back and gone, I wonder where that would have taken me. Yeah. I'm generally a yes man, and then if I get further down that opportunity and I figure it's not going somewhere, I don't feel like it's the right place for me, then I'll pull out.
Yeah, there's a famous saying that luck is when preparation meets opportunity. Yeah. And I think maybe for yourself, some people might say, or ex special forces might say, oh, he's very lucky that he ended up in a TV show, a mainstream TV show. Or I might tell someone I'm interviewing, Jay Morton today, and they say, oh, that's lucky. I wish that's you're really lucky that that's happened. But I think what people don't see is that there's you have to prepare yourself for when those opportunities come, or you're not going to be able to take them. So like for me, I know that if I hadn't spent a year doing podcasts where I didn't actually interview anyone, where I just sort of tried to learn the skills, speaking skills, journalism courses online and things like that. And when the opportunity came where I first interviewed that woman I mentioned, the director of Nike, then I wouldn't have been able to take that opportunity effectively. So do you see that as opportunities being something we need to make sure we're ready for? Otherwise we can't grasp them properly.
Yeah, it's almost like you've got to know where you want to be in, like not so much know where you want to be in 5 or 10 years, right? I'm not a massive fan of that, because I find like I'm just a massive fan of seeking out opportunity or noticing it when it falls on your lap. But yeah, like I completely agree with what you're saying. It's like you have to be in a position to be given that opportunity in the first place. But then you also have to recognize it, right? Because opportunities fall on everyone's lap all the time. And sometimes you just might push it off as a conversation or something that someone says or an email or whatever it is. But if you're in that mindset of, searching for whether it's a better life or growth, you're more open to those, or you find it's like a muscle as well, right? It's like the more opportunities you see and take, the more just tend to fall on your lap. But you've got to be, you've got to put yourself out there massively. It's like even the TV stuff, right? That came with knock-on effects and negative things and whatever. And there's a lot of people where that would have come up, the initial conversations, and not seen it as a massive opportunity to take and turn that down. It kind of ties in with self as well. It's like you've got to, if you understand yourself and how you work and where you want to be, it's almost easier to spot those opportunities arising.
The third letter, so let's talk about leadership. It's something that fascinates me. In fact, I've done an entire episode on leadership with a leadership expert before. What do you think are the fundamental differences between a manager and a leader? Because like, I think if everyone listening to this thinks of their boss at work, they can be a manager, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're a leader at the same time. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think managers are given position. I think leadership or leaders, I think that's a position that someone seeks out. Like you don't search to be a manager. Anyone in a high performing team, whether it's rugby or in the special forces, like everyone in that team should be aspiring to be a leader, like first and foremost. Not so much where they're annoying whoever's in charge because they're trying to push them out of the way and out alpha them or whatever. But you should be, when I was going through my military career, I'd look at who was in charge of me, and there's some. I've had leaders that are, really stand out, and I've kind of looked at them and tried to model them and tried to look at why I think they're such a great leader. And then I've also had like the opposite. I've had really bad leaders where, you know, pretty much everyone underneath them felt that poor leadership. And I've tried to analyze that as well, which has led me on my own kind of path of like, when I come to look after guys below me or whatever, the characteristics that I want to take from both styles of leadership.
What do you think are the biggest mistakes that poor leaders have made in your experience, or the worst traits they have to become a leader then?
Yeah, I put it down to, I mean, it felt like it all stemmed down from like, you know, personal insecurities. Like lack of trust is a massive one, and that has a knock-on effect in terms of micromanaging. You know, and in the role that we had, you get a role from whoever's in charge, and you go and carry out that role. And if that person has no trust in you because he doesn't feel like he could do it effectively, then that turns into micromanagement, and you know, micromanagement is the death of any leader. Yeah, that's kind of the main one for poor leaders.
Yeah, I like that. So if we're talking about danger, the next one then, obviously not everyone listening to this is going to put themselves in situations in which they, you know, climbing Everest or they're in firefights like you've been. But do you think it's important that everyone finds just a little way to expose themselves to something that triggers just a little bit of fear in them every now and again?
Yeah, sure. And you know, that danger doesn't necessarily mean those dangerous things where you're at risk of dying. I mean, it could be something as simple as getting in the bin in the morning. Has the same, that feeling, that apprehension that you have when you wake up in the morning is a similar kind of, you know, similar kind of system that the danger system brings out in your body. And it could just be like putting yourself in those situations that you almost fear, you know, like what we were talking about before. It could be something like simple as just, you know, going out for a run when you don't run, like, because a lot of people probably get anxiety and are worried about that kind of stuff. And then it's just about building on that, right? Like, the more stressful situations or the more difficult situations you can put yourself in, the more you're going to come along as a human being, and kind of the better you're going to develop yourself, and the stronger you're going to be, right? Yeah. As a person.
I love what you mentioned as well. You talk about the holy trinity of dealing with danger. So exposure, knowledge, and commitment. Especially the knowledge one for me. I think obviously the more you know about something, the less you're going to fear it, I guess. So I could have been scared to do this interview today, but I spent all day yesterday going through your book. So I have all this knowledge. So then when it comes to the interview, I'm not concerned at all. I'm not scared of it. Can you talk a little bit about that holy trinity and your system of tackling danger?
Yeah, like, and I'll just go on to say that everyone's different as well. Yeah. Like everyone responds differently to it. So whereas you like to prep yourself with knowledge, a lot of people just like to throw themselves in and get constant exposure. So yeah, it's all about kind of knowing where you are and how you work within that system. Yeah, for me, I prefer just exposure. Like the more times I can expose myself to something, yeah, I like a little bit of knowledge, but it's more about exposure and just getting that constant exposure and just making it feel normal.
One thing that we briefly spoke about in the first podcast we did was your Everest summits, but I didn't know the extent of some of the things that went on until I read this book. And there's that story you give about between Camp 1 and 2 in 2019. How real was the danger you were facing then, and what did it bring out in you?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty bad, you know. Like it's one of those things though that until you start telling the story, like I've been exposed to danger like my whole life, whether it's on tour, whether it's the job that I do, and it does start to normalize. And you know, it's probably a defense mechanism. We build up a good sense of humor around it. So I guess when you're doing it, like, you don't, I mean, the thought was in the back of my head that, you know, like I say in the book, I kept imagining the guys waking up at Camp 2 the next day and then hearing that there'd been a climber found just below Camp 2 and then realizing it's me, which actually made me laugh bizarrely. So I was like, oh no, I'd feel about seeing one of the guys. And I don't know, that's probably a byproduct of just being in some sticky situations in my life and just dealing with it with humor. But yeah, I mean, that was like, I remember leaving Camp 1 and I left Geth with the Sherpa, and you know, I'd probably been like uncontrollably shivering for like a good hour. I literally had all the clothes that I had on, like zero water. It was kind of pitch black outside, -20, and it's quite like the climb from Camp 1 to Camp 2 is quite tedious because it's a big, long kind of, do you know, like when you go out for a run, you've got those hills that aren't steep, but they're kind of slow and long.
Yeah.
So they take forever. So it takes like 4 to 6 hours, but it's a constant uphill slog. There was a load of fresh snow, so there was no tracks to stick to. You're pretty much just walking in quite deep snow. And I just remember I was walking, and you can't walk fast enough to generate body heat, but I was shivering. So I'm like walking and shivering at the same time. And then that's draining my energy because, you know, I'd eaten all my food, I drank all my water. And like the last bit going up to Camp 2 is it gets steeper, and I was just like, I was pretty much done. And the thoughts are in my head, in the back of my head, just thinking, right, I'm gonna be that guy that that dies just below Camp 2. But nah, I remember getting into Camp 2, and yeah, I was pretty exhausted. I think everyone had gone to bed. There was just some hot water and some cold food left out for me, which I ate, and then found that I couldn't sleep afterwards because I think my body was just that exhausted. It just couldn't settle.
I guess in that situation, you don't really have a choice. You either get on with it or die, I guess, right?
Well, that's it. It's like, it's not like one of those immediate danger situations where, you know, for example, a car's about to hit you, or like one of those dangerous situations that's over in a few seconds. This was something that you're going over for like 3 or 4 hours, and you know, it's a situation that I've been in many a time, maybe not like that close to death, but like it's literally just a case of putting one foot in front of the other because you know where you've got to get to, because when you get to there, that's safe, right? You can get in the sleeping bag and warm up. But yeah, it doesn't stop the thoughts going through your head of what could happen.
I can't imagine that, man. I mean, when I went to base camp, I think the flight from Luckler Airport was enough danger for me. That's a fucking nightmare.
Oh, it's horrible, isn't it? Yeah, that's the worst part about climbing Everest. I think is that flight to Luckler. I think the more times you do it, the worse it becomes.
I'd never do it again. And on the way in, because there was so much fog, we couldn't actually take the plane, so we had to get a helicopter. And I'd never been in a helicopter before, but I just looked at it and I thought that doesn't look like a high end helicopter. And oh man, it was horrendous. I hated every second of it.
Because we usually fly. Well, we fly out of base camp when we finish the climb, and that 2009 one, we'd booked the helicopter, and I remember it was getting towards the end of the day, and literally the weather's quite standard on base camp. It's like really good, like really clear blue skies in the morning, and then all this cloud just creeps in towards the end of the day. And we booked this helicopter, and it wasn't turning up for ages, and it's getting to like 4 o'clock, and it turns up, and there's like a ceiling of cloud just sat like above us, and it managed to fly below the cloud, land, and I sent the other lads on there. I was like, "You guys get out of here!" And we're all like itching to get out of base camp because you just spent 6 weeks there. So like everyone's just like, "I just want to get down and see some green and eat some food."
Yeah.
I sent the lads away on this flight, and I was like, "I hope it comes back. I hope it comes back." Literally, this helicopter came back. It was just like me and some random guy just got on it, and like all the bags, and literally flew out, and he's basically following the valley, right?
Yeah.
And he just hit cloud, like just came to some cloud, and he's like, hats off to the pilot. He's a local pilot, but he's hovering maybe like 5 meters above the ground, and he's just like going forward, like seeing that there's cloud there, trying to go left, like trying to go right, trying to go left. He's just trying to like poke his way through.
Yeah.
And like I spent like all my life in helicopters, and like that, like, because you can't see what's behind the cloud, right? You can't see that there's mountains or whatever it is. And I just remember being sat in the back, and I was just like, I almost want to watch, because I'm in awe of his helicopter skills, but at the same time just close my eyes and hope that we don't crash into anything.
Oh, it's horrendous, man. I'd rather just have a cup of coffee at Namche Bazaar for me.
Yeah, and a few beers in the Irish bar.
That's the one, yeah. Great place. On to the next one then, intelligence. We mentioned the school system already, but I'd love to get a take on it. What would you change about the school system if you could? Is there anything you'd add or take away?
Yeah, I think you could probably condense a lot of the topics into like a multiple topic class. I think business is a really important skill. How to set up a business, how to be self-employed, how to do taxes, how to do all that stuff that that you struggle to learn even as an adult. Let's think, what else? Like a more emphasis on outdoor stuff. Like you do the classic sports, but even just kind of outdoor learning, whether it's kind of nature stuff, whether it's learning about the oceans and how they work and how they can be dangerous, and more emphasis on just being outdoors and climbing and that kind of sport as well. What else?
I think that maybe a bit of an emphasis on social skills as well would have been, for me especially, beneficial at the time.
Conversational skills, right?
Yeah,
because that's like, I think that's one of the most important things as an adult is conversational skills.
Absolutely. I'd also add that maybe the way I think they assess people, because if you don't have a good memory, you're buggered, because you're not actually taught the subject, so to speak, or how to understand the subject. You're taught how to remember certain things to pass the exam. So you don't, for history, for example, at GCSE level anyway, they don't teach you to understand or interpret the history. They just teach you, remember these dates, remember these facts, regurgitate them onto a bit of paper, and then your memory will give you a grade.
Yeah, and where's the kind of thinking process in that you want as an individual?
Exactly.
Like if you were employing someone, it's like, memorizing stuff is great, but what about like strategy? What about like free thinking ideas? All this creative stuff that fits well into building businesses or doing stuff outside of the normal.
Yeah, there's an example you gave in the book. I can't remember what company it was. I think it was a magazine company, and you talk about, like, they say that when people apply, they don't want their CVs because that's like not an accurate representation of what they can offer.
Yeah, it's true though, right? It's like,
Spot
I
on.
remember writing my CV, and I was just like, I sound like Superman.
Yeah.
But it's like, that's the couple of sheets of A4 that it's not lying, is it? But you're just trying to make it as elaborate as possible so that you get employed. And it's like, you can teach it. Like if you've got a business, you can teach anyone how to do any skill, right? It's just how adaptable they are, like their personality type and their character, in terms of can they fit well into a team, and can they absorb this skill and work on it and make it better.
Yeah, I think back to CVs, and in my school, in my GCSE years, I think one teacher tried to start up a debating club, and I turned up to it, and I think 3 people turned up, and it never happened again. It was just like a 1-week thing, didn't work. But on my CV to this day, it says I was captain of the debate club in school. And my brother took it one step further. I mean, in 2005, they do the Times Person of the Year. In 2005, they said that the Times Person of the Year was everybody in the world. So my brother's CV, he's got Times Person of the Year 2005. I mean,
genius. I mean, you can pretty much put whatever you want because no one can fact check it, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, they're not going to ring up my school and ask if I was the captain of the debate team, are they? I mean,
Exactly. Yeah, I just think it's like I can imagine some people are really good at writing a CV,
Mm.
but then they might be really crap at other things. Whereas you might find someone just, isn't articulate enough to write a CV, but then they're the kind of person that you want.
Yeah, for sure. On to the topic of excellence, what would you say the key things to sort of hone in on and focus on? Because I think, especially in self-help lately, everyone's on this pursuit for excellence. It's all about this pursuit of excellence. What do you think the key things to focus on if you're one of those people on that pursuit?
Um, yeah, I guess it's important to have some sort of markers. I'm not a massive fan of them, but um, every kind of system seems to work where it's got some sort of mark or a goal to work to. And I think it's important to understand, right? It's like you use the term excellence, but it's one of those things that you never really achieve, or you shouldn't really achieve. I think the moment that you think that you've achieved it and you are excellent in anything is, probably the biggest mess up that you'll ever make. I think I mentioned it in the book. It's like always being that white belt,
Yeah.
always just having that beginner's kind of thirst or that beginner's curiosity. And you can coin it a search for excellence, but it is that never-ending journey of just trying to, be clear, seek more knowledge, gain more skills, be
Mm.
more healthy, be around more radiators,
Yeah.
all those kind of things.
I guess for you at the moment, one area you're focusing on is probably business with your clothing company, and this sort of goes back to intelligence. But how have you managed to sort of self-educate yourself in the topic of business? Were you looking at materials? Was it just hands-on experience? How did you sort of learn?
It's exposure again, and just getting involved with it. And I think it's probably something a lot of military guys do a disservice on themselves with when they leave is you kind of don't understand what your skills are and how they fit into a civilian world. But like, military guys, especially special forces guys, like you do, however many years in the military, and then you leave and you've developed all these skills that you actually didn't know you developed because
Yeah.
you just do it through osmosis.
Mm.
Um, and some of those skills are very key in business. Um, and a lot of the stuff that we did in the special forces is like learning new stuff and adapting yourself to new situations or tasks. And that's what you do when you start a business, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
like you kind of look at what you need to do and adapt and adjust yourself to that and just learn as much as you can and throw yourself in.
Mm. I guess another example of, I'm assuming you didn't go to university, you didn't get a business degree. It's just all sort of hands-on experience. And I think, there maybe are some degrees in which people get, but they didn't necessarily need. I mean, my main job I ended up in was a gym instructor. I have a degree in history, so not sure how that helps me.
Yeah. Like, yeah, exactly that. That goes back to seeking opportunity as well, doesn't it?
Oh,
Just,
exactly.
just, just trying to find those opportunities and take them.
Yeah. The last letter, resilience, brings me back to an episode I did with an author who wrote a book called 48 Ways to Build a Strong and Resilient Mindset. And the concept of the book is just about, he purposely come up with these 48 ways to challenge himself or put himself in difficult situations. So I think similar to the bin thing you do, it's like cold water shock. There's things like he'll go and sleep on the street for a night or something random. And there's 48 things you can get through in the book. And it's to build a resilient mindset. But you agree that like purposely putting yourself in challenging situations is like a good way to build the resilience up?
Yeah, massively. Like, I always kind of explain it like when you're a baby and you come out of the womb, you're helpless and you're so reliant on your parents to bring you food, to look after you, to stop you from falling over and banging your head. Um, but then the older you get, the more kind of you can do and walk and talk. And you fall over, you bang your head, and you learn not to do that again. Or you jump on a bike and you fall off the bike, bang your head, and you learn not to do that again. And it's that whole thing of like, we're not born with resistance, but over time and over falling off our bike or falling out of a tree, or, you know, being dumped by a girlfriend, or not getting the grades we wanted, or, you know, not getting the job we wanted, or playing in sport, all these kind of things of, you know, putting ourselves in, you know, stressful situations or putting ourselves out there. We build resilience through that. And then there's kind of hacks or whatever you want to call them, that you can do on top of that. So the bin's a classic example. It's like, if I can get up in the morning at 7 a.m. and the first thing I do is get into a cold bin, like, everything else, just every other decision after that just seems so easy, because that was the hardest decision that I had to make. And I guess I've kind of been lucky throughout my life, is I've managed to build resilience through my job, through my career, through just being exposed constantly to difficult things, and then those difficult things normalize and you're on to the next level of difficult things.
When I asked people for their questions, a few, like I said, obviously I didn't get many that I could read out, but one thing people wanted to know was what's next for you in terms of challenging yourself, because obviously you've done the things like the climbing, you've done the TV show, I think you're coming out of the TV show now. So what is next for you? What is your next personal challenge?
So I started racing cars.
Wow.
That's like
How
a
did that
massive
happen?
challenge. Opportunity. Like, got the opportunity and just went, do you know what? Like, I didn't set out to be a racing car driver, but it kind of ticks all the boxes of something that I want to do. So yeah, that's like causing a massive challenge in itself, because like all these other races, they started when they were 8 years old, and now I'm like 36 years old trying to play catch up. So that's like a massive challenge. You know, it can be quite deflating when you see how poor you are compared to all these other races, but then at the same time, it's something that you can see yourself getting better and better at all the time. So it ticks the boxes. And then, yeah, I guess I've got loads of things going on. I'm like a juggling artist. So like, at the minute, I've got a couple of projects that I'm working on, which I won't talk about just because they're kind of in their infancy.
Yeah.
And then I kind of want to get back out to Nepal and start climbing again. Like, I was supposed to do K2 this summer, but that's kind of not happening just because of the COVID thing. So we'll kind of look at next year and how next year is going to look at in terms of being able to travel and climb. But yeah, that's still on the to-do list.
Cool. The last question I have for you, at the moment, well, for me anyway, that what makes my life worth living at the moment is like conversations like these and putting them out and knowing that, like, if one person listens and it helps them, then I can sleep well at night. But for you, what makes a life worth living?
So many reasons. Like, I'm grateful for like the smallest of things to the largest of things. Yeah, like, so many things, Lewis. Just like getting up in the morning and going for a walk. Like, I enjoy that.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, do you know what? Like, I'm a person that needs to do things, and if I'm doing things that I'm engaged in, then I'm happy. Like, I can't just sit on the sofa and watch TV. Like, that's when I'm unhappy and feel like unfulfilled. So as long as I'm engaged in things that I'm creating, and, you know, they're developing and I can see progress in them, then I'm a happy man.
Awesome. Time for a bit of call to action then. We talked a lot about Soldier, the book, today. Where can everyone listening buy the book? Is there an audiobook version they can check out? Plug away.
Yeah, so Soldier, Respect is Earned is out on the 12th of November. You can get it on Amazon, or you can get signed versions on Waterstones, and the audio book, which will be my voice,
I like that.
should be out on the 12th of November also.
Awesome. Nothing annoys me more than when I download an audiobook and it's not the author's voice.
Same. I'm not even like a massive fan of my own voice, but I just know how I feel like listening to someone else's book and it's not their voice.
Yeah, it's terrible, man. Thanks for coming back on the show. I really enjoyed this conversation. I hope you enjoyed it as well. I'm off to buy a wheelie bin.
Awesome. Cheers, Lewis. Take care.
Cheers.